Knowles on the news. Susan Knowles.
Have you ever been in one of those moods where you just wanted to cheer? I had to add a little bit of the clapping and cheering because I think it's been one of those days. It's been a very good day for the United States. It's been a very good day also for our relationship with Israel. I don't know about you, but when I watched the conference between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, for the first time in 8 years, I felt like we treated Israel with the respect that they deserve by welcoming their prime minister to the White House, by extending our gratitude, by being somebody who was, nice to them, acknowledged them, didn't kind of make them go through the back door as Obama did, didn't make them wait. Welcome them into the White House. Benjamin Netanyahu and his wife, along with President Trump and President Trump's wife, Melania, they were all there. And it was just so great to see that. And you could tell there was no tension in the room as there has been under the Obama administration. We truly wanted to have the Prime Minister there, and we truly welcomed him as a dignitary, with dignity, into the White House. I mean, it was really a great thing to see. And, not only was it a great thing to see, but it was a really great thing to hear what Benjamin Netanyahu said. Now, nobody told him what to say. It wasn't planned out in advance. I mean, he may have planned it out, but it certainly wasn't planned out by the White House. Well, you go out and you say this or anything like that. It was just, it felt to me very genuine what he was saying and how he addressed the president and Americans in general. Every time that Netanyahu comes to America and he's allowed to speak, I mean, gosh, I don't know. I feel inspired. I really do. I feel like this is a man who understands leadership. Is he perfect? No. But he understands how to get the job done. He understands how to motivate people and give enthusiasm and hope to individuals. And he did that again today. Let's take a listen to what he had to say to the American people.
The United States has no better ally than Israel. Our alliance has been remarkably strong. But under your leadership, I'm confident it will get even stronger.
Ugh. Seriously, I mean, wasn't that amazing? I feel that he really believes that we are friends and strong allies with Israel, even though we've treated them basically, I have to say, like dirt and disrespectfully for the past 8 years. And still, he showed us the respect that we are due too, and confirmed that we are still allies, that we are very much together on this and moving forward. And I really, really appreciated that. And I know that Trump is very much interested in trying to bring peace between Israel and Palestine. Now, I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if Trump is the one who is supposed to be charged with doing that. And if you're a Christian and you're reading Revelations, that's not necessarily what you want to have happen in some ways. If you want the rapture to come and you believe in the rapture, you really want that peace agreement to occur. But who knows what's going to happen? It didn't sound very much like Netanyahu was all that interested, because he has very strict guidelines for what he will do and how he will agree to a peace agreement, and that is that Palestine has to recognize Israel. Palestine, I don't really think, is going to do that. Eventually, at some point, they probably will. Something has to happen. I don't know if it'll be under the Trump administration where that will happen. Who knows? But I think it's at least, they're talking about it. And I know that President Trump asked him today to wait on building the settlements in Israel. Now, for any negotiator, I can see where President Trump would think, well, let's not cause any more issues. Let's kind of go in there, kind of neutral, if you will, as neutral as we can be, and sitting down with Palestine and talking to them. And it's going to not be a good thing if they know that you're out there building homes on the land that they claim, that the Palestinians claim, that Israel claims as theirs. So again, very interesting times. All of that's going to kind of play itself out, and we'll see what happens with that. But I was just so pleased to see what happened today, and I'm sure that you probably were too, and for those of you who believe that it's very important for us to have the ally that we do with Israel. Now, I know every one of us we're kind of done in a lot of respects with the whole Michael Flynn, the National Security Advisor, the whole thing that happened with Michael Flynn. I know that conservatives probably want to just move on because he has resigned. And now it's time to look for somebody else to replace him. But you can guarantee that the left is not going to move on from this. And it's going to be something that they keep talking about for weeks, maybe months, maybe a year. I don't know. But it's one of those things that the left just can't let go of because they have an agenda. They have a mission that they are working on, and that is do whatever they can to take down not only the Trump administration, but Donald Trump himself. That is their goal. And they thought by getting to Flynn that they could get to Donald Trump. If they could get to Flynn and show that he had ties to Russia and that he talked to Russia before he even was confirmed, that somehow they could show that illegality there, and they could get to him, take people out one by one, and eventually peel back all of the layers and get to President Trump. It's funny, Jay Sekulow of the ACLJ, the American Center for Law and Justice, they're calling it a political coup. And essentially he's right. Because it is. They want to target one individual after another. And as you may already know, the Labor Secretary has stepped down. He was in the process of being confirmed. And I guess tapes surfaced, or videotapes from years ago, of his ex-wife saying that he had allegedly committed some type of domestic violence against her. And she even said she made it up. It was just a lie. She made it up. But that didn't stop the left from continuing to pressure. And finally, he withdrew, and he's no longer in that position. And now there's another one to find a replacement for. And you can see where the left, again, they hope that they can just continue to peel back the layers and hopefully get to Donald Trump and try to pin something on him. I've never seen an administration where people want to say, well, this is the first 100 days, but we don't even have an administration that's all together. The left continues to drag their feet so that we can't bring an administration in under Donald Trump. We have still the Obama administration involved. Obama didn't have this problem. None of the other presidents in the past had this kind of issue. The left may have, hemmed and hawed, but they didn't continue to drag their feet and try to get everybody removed and, nobody confirmed. That's what the left really would love to do. And so we have that issue where we've got to get these people in. But getting back to Flynn, everybody was pinning their hopes. The left was, you could see them circling, like the sharks in the ocean. Oh my gosh, okay, let's go. Flynn, we got him. We really have him now. And some of the disturbing things that came out about that is, with Flynn, when he talked to the Russians, he didn't do anything illegal. And let me play you just a few minutes of Sean Spicer explaining this to the American public, and I'll go a little bit further after that.
We've been reviewing it. I want to address the events of last night first and foremost. We've been reviewing and evaluating this issue with respect to General Flynn on a daily basis for a few weeks, trying to ascertain the truth. We got to a point not based on a legal issue, but based on a trust issue, where the level of trust between the President and General Flynn had eroded to the point where he felt he had to make a change. The President was very concerned that General Flynn had misled the Vice President and others. He was also very concerned, in light of sensitive subjects dealt with by that position of national security advisors like China, North Korea, and the Middle East, that the President must have complete and unwavering trust for the person in that position. The evolving and eroding level of trust as a result of this situation and a series of other questionable instances is what led the President to ask for General Flynn's resignation. Immediately after the Department of Justice notified the White House counsel of the situation, the White House counsel briefed the President and a small group of his senior advisors. The White House counsel reviewed and determined that there is not an illegal issue, but rather a trust issue. During this process, it's important to note that the President did not have his Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, who he trusts immensely, approved by the Senate. When the President heard the information as presented by White House counsel, he instinctively thought that General Flynn did not do anything wrong, and the White House counsel's review corroborated that. It is not ordinary for an incoming national security advisor to speak with his counterparts about the issues of concern to them. In fact, he spoke with over 30 of his counterparts throughout the transition. As Charles Krauthammer said last night, it is, quote, perfectly reasonable for him to do so. The issue here was that the President got to the point where General Flynn's relationship misleading the Vice President and others, or the possibility that he had forgotten critical details of this important conversation, had created a critical mass and an unsustainable situation. That's why the President decided to ask for his resignation, and he got it.
Okay, so listening to that, it's pretty reasonable. He explained it very well. And let's go through that. Number one, Trump initially believed that the law was not broken when this was brought to his attention. He then asked the White House legal counsel to look into everything and to find out if what he thought was true, that there in fact had been no law broken. So even though he went and talked to Russia before he was confirmed, no legal issues there. Even though he talked to Russia, and if he talked about the sanctions against Russia before he was confirmed, still no legal issues there, no violations of the law. So eventually what they found, that there were no legal violations. It was solely an issue of trust. And there's some other issues that are important to look at here. Because if you recall during this press conference, the media could not let it go. Every question was on this issue, asked in very similar ways, but going right back to, well, why didn't you do something? Well, if the president knew, why didn't he let him go that day? Why didn't he do this? Why didn't he first of all, I think this was brought to his attention by the legal counsel, the DOJ. And you know that the DOJ, at the time when they brought this to Trump's attention, it was the DOJ from the Obama administration, right? Nobody's mentioning that. Nobody on the left is mentioning that. That's not important to them. Again, facts don't matter. And let's not mention the fact that it was Obama's administration DOJ that went to the president initially. And then it appears that they were kind of looking at everything and didn't get back to Trump for about 13 days. There was an issue of that, and then them getting back to him and saying, okay, we've looked at everything, everything's fine. And the media were asking questions like, well, why did it take so long? Why didn't you do something? Why? Now, if this had been the Obama administration, and they had heard that there was a possibility that something was wrong and they were looking into it, if the Obama administration had fired the individual or asked them to resign that day, there would have been a fallout. Why didn't you wait? Why didn't you wait until you had more proof? You know how the left does. There's no way to satisfy them, because their agenda is, let's get to Trump, let's get him out, let's get his administration out. That's all they care about. So none of the truth, none of the facts matter. But that's interesting. And what else is interesting about it is what is less interesting to the left and to the media is that somebody is leaking this information. For example, what I mean is that the information about Flynn was leaked. In fact, from what I understand, they basically said to Trump, we have the transcripts for you to look at about the conversation between Flynn and the Russians. And not only do we have the transcripts, but we have the oral transcripts as well. We have the audio. We have the conversation. So we'll give you that. And this should alarm you, me, and everybody else out there who cares about our freedom. At the time when the NSA was recording all of this, Flynn was a private citizen. He had not yet been confirmed. What about his privacy issues there? What about his constitutional rights? Where's the ACLU coming out and talking about how his rights were violated, right? They should be. And we should be pressing for them to look into constitutional violations because this could be happening to you and me. And that's important. And it's important also that this information, classified information, perhaps secret information, is getting leaked out into the public. And I know some of you are saying, well, that's good. We need to know what's going on. Yeah, to a certain point, we do need to know what's going on. But what needs to happen is that the administration gets this information. People with classified and secret clearances need to hear this information, not necessarily you and I. We don't get to hear classified and secret information. We never have. And there should be no reason that it stops now. So we should find out who is leaking that information. And that's a federal crime. Whoever is leaking that information is going to face prosecution. And it could be possible jail time. Now, I don't know who it is. But I can tell you, in looking at this, there are some things that are going on here that I think are important. Let's put it this way. How many people are in the State Department and otherwise that Obama brought in that are part of the Muslim Brotherhood potentially, right? Also, because of that and other reasons, there are people who do not want to see our relationship with Israel continue. They are not pro-Israel, okay? So there are reasons to leak information to the public. And we know that this president does not like the Iran deal. He said that in the presser with Netanyahu. Said it was like one of the worst deals ever, and because it was. And he said also that I'll make sure that they don't get the nuclear capabilities to harm us, which apparently the last president didn't give any thought to, although he says he did. So there are people, because they are pro-Muslim Brotherhood, that are in the administration still, because those people are still in place, the Obama administration. A lot of people are still there who would be in favor of this Iran deal. We know Valerie Jarrett helped write that deal, right? At least negotiated, had some part in it. And so those people would be in favor of the Iran deal and not in favor of a Trump administration who might try to do something to change that or bring sanctions against Israel or Iran, whatever the case may be. The Iran deal to them is a great thing. And, finally, look at this. We talked about, before the election, about Hillary Clinton and potentially all the corruption that occurred when she was in the State Department. Well, if you're leaking information because you want to bring down the Trump administration. Perhaps part of that could be so that you assure that nobody has time or the desire to look into any further anything about Hillary Clinton, her emails, her email servers, or the Clinton Foundation. I mean, let's face it. A lot happened over the past 8 years in the Obama administration that needs looking into. And if you leak all of this information, it's going to be where the Trump administration every day has to kind of keep the leaks from happening, is going to spend all the time doing that and not getting down to business where the American public wants to get down to business. I mean, look at all the things that Trump has done so far. He came in and it was like a blaze. Every day something new was happening, doing this and doing that, getting new jobs, getting all of these things happening. Let's get repeal and replace Obamacare. All of those things were moving forward. It's slowed down. Have you noticed? And why is that? Because there's a lot going on. And I'm sure there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we don't know. And now we're going to have to take time and pick new people. Should Flynn have been, not fired, but should he have resigned? I don't know. I am kind of on the fence with that. A lot of people say, well, if the president and vice president couldn't trust him, then yeah, he should go. Was it just a matter of him thinking, I talked about a lot of things. I don't know if I talked about sanctions. Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. Should he have said that he did? Should he have remembered everything? I don't know. But apparently, if you can't trust somebody, and especially in that type of position, talking about national security, you've got to be able to trust that person implicitly. Because our lives here in the United States, our lives depend upon that trust. And knowing that when that person says something, that it means something, and that you can depend upon that and take it to the bank. Because again, lives depend upon it. So perhaps it was the best thing for him to do. And I think one thing, in a situation as serious as this, sometimes you have to look a little bit for the humor. Because the left is always doing things that if you really look at it, it is humorous because they're so serious and all their whole lives, I think, are caught up in going, okay, what can we do today? How can we ruin everything today? How can we take this president down? What can we do? So they're always against the president, right, with his Twitter accounts. They hate it. They hate it when he goes to Twitter. Half of them probably don't know even how to tweet or what a tweet is or how to use Twitter or how to locate it, right? So they have somebody else on staff that does it, or every now and then they take their hand at it. Well, it was so interesting because after all of this happened, Nancy Pelosi, Minority House Representatives, I can see this. Nancy went on Twitter, found a tweet from Michael Flynn, she thought, and I mean, can you imagine Nancy? Her eyes probably got really wide, and she probably ran as fast as she could to get in front of the cameras. Okay, bring the press together. I have an announcement. And in there, in this tweet, in this account from quote-unquote Michael Flynn, it said basically he'd been used as a scapegoat. And I just want you to hear... I just want you to hear Nancy and the excitement and the time it probably took her to look up definitions and to get everything straight and to make sure that she got it right because she's uncovering Watergate, right? She's exposing Watergate, something so huge as Watergate to the American public. So you got to make sure that you get everything right down to a definition. So listen to what Nancy had to say about this tweet from the account of quote-unquote Michael Flynn.
But I will say this, I didn't know until I heard from our colleague that the tweet of General Flynn today was scapegoat. Scapegoat. You know what a scapegoat is? That means in a community where people want to absolve themselves of guilt, They get a goat, and they heap all of the ills onto the goat, and then they run the goat out of town. So the inference to be drawn from his statement is that other people have blame that should be shared in all of this. The good news
is Nancy was wrong as usual. The good news is that this wasn't even General Flynn's Twitter account. It was just a kind of a parody account. So Nancy's ready to go at any moment and find out who else is involved. Again, she's looking at it, I've got the president right where I want him. And how embarrassing that she has to be told later on. And first, let me tell you, Cummings came out too. Elijah Cummings. He had to get out there and make a statement. Ooh, yeah, we gotta look into all this. This is horrible. The world's falling down, and we're gonna help you out. We're gonna save you because we've got this Trump administration, and you're gonna be just fine. So both of them had egg on their faces. When a staff member came up and said, "Excuse me, madam, but it's a parody account. It's fake." And Nancy can be heard saying, "What do you mean it's fake? Fake? What's that?" Well, Nancy, fake means fake. Fake means you were fooled. Fake means that you were so interested in doing something to harm this administration and in turn harm the American public, although you don't see it that way, that you were willing to call a press conference and try to go and find out who all was involved, who the scapegoats were. Unbelievable. And you know what? They deserved it. Both of them deserved it. And you would think that the media... Now, if this happened... You remember George Bush? There are certain things he couldn't say well, or, he would stutter over things, whatever the case may be. They would spend 3 days showing you from every angle what he looked like when he said it, and they would change the volume up and down regarding how he said it. Did you see anything in mainstream media about Nancy Pelosi and the fake parody account? I sure didn't. Didn't hear a peep. Was on one or two websites and then totally disappeared. Just, you're not going to hear about it. They're going to move on, and they'll find some other thing that they can do to just go on another day and try to take this administration down. That's their life's goal. That's exactly what they're going to do. And it's also the goal of the media. Let's face it. We know that about mainstream media, and it's I tell you, it can't be more evident until you watch a press conference. When you sit there and watch these people ask these gotcha questions, I mean, it's just amazing. They don't have your self-interest in mind. Sean Spicer, press secretary Sean Spicer, he calls on the same people all the time. These are probably the senior people, probably told, call on the senior people. So there are other people out there that don't get their questions answered. And those senior people, they already have their questions before they come in. They know exactly what they're going to ask, because it's whatever fits the agenda of the left. That's what they're going to ask. And so he calls on them. I don't know their names all that well, but I know their faces because it's every press conference. And I think the only time we really get good questions is when they open it up to Skype. I mean, finally you're getting questions that somebody in the American public might be interested in and knowing the answer to. And I think really, because right now the media is out for revenge. They want to show Sean Spicer, hey, you don't run the show, we do. And we're going to come in here and we're going to help take you down. Instead of doing their jobs and what they should do, they're seeking revenge for themselves. They're not doing things for the American public. If they were trying to take him down for the benefit of the American public, that might be one thing. That's not what they're trying to do. What happened was Trump insulted them. Trump's called them fake media, which they have. They fake news. They have it a lot. He's right in that regard. And instead of trying to do better and say, oh, gosh, we don't want the president to think of us that way, we'll try to do better and we'll just bring you the facts. No, they're in full-out revenge mode. Oh, really? You feel that way? Well, we will show you. And so every question is a gotcha. And every question is, when he's trying to answer, when Sean Spicer is trying to answer their questions, they interrupt. It throws him off track. And he ends up having to go back and kind of answer their second question that they've asked in the middle of their first question. And then, of course, everybody's got to have a follow-up question. No, I think everybody needs to have one question. You get one shot, move on to the next person. And I'll tell you, for a while, I don't think Sean Spicer should call on anybody that he normally calls on. Call on somebody else. Go totally to Skype. And I know some people have said, well, let's just get rid of having those press conferences altogether. Come in there, have an empty room, and, say what you got to say and leave. And the American public, wouldn't like that. They have some questions they want answered. Okay, then let's go to the Skype people. Let's have an entire audience filled with just people on Skype asking questions. I guarantee you, when that press conference is over, you'll know more than you did before that press conference started. You'll know more than you did before these recent press conferences with these gotcha questions and the same old people. I've said it to you before, and I'll say it again. We have got to replace the media. We truly have to become the media. I'm trying to do my part, bringing you 3 shows and writing articles that I write on my website at SUSANKNOWLES.com. But, in order for me, for example, to have an expansion, I need sponsors, more donations, things of that nature, which, by the way, you can donate at SUSANKNOWLES.com. But people like me, we need your backing so that we can bring you the legitimate, real news that you are interested in hearing, and giving you all of the facts that we can find. With a limited budget, you can only look at so many different places. But if you had the money and the time, you can do the research and bring even more facts. This is what we need. We need individuals like myself joining with other individuals and making new TV stations, radio stations, whatever, to actually bring you real news for a change as well, so that you can hear what's going on and know the insides and outs and get different opinions about what is really going on, because that's not what we hear. If you go and you read these reports, let's say from the New York Times, the New York Post, the Washington Times, Fox News, practically, Washington Times, everything, they're all the same. They have the same slant to them. If you've read any of my articles, I try to give you what they're not saying. What, in a lot of respects, what my opinion is as well on what they're not saying and why they're not saying it to you. Those things, it's important to know those things. It's important to think about those things. Things we were talking about in regards to the Muslim Brotherhood, where I was talking a minute ago about Flynn. They're not going to tell you that. You are never going to hear that. I'm telling you that because I feel that's the truth. And I've looked at a lot of other articles and done other research. I really feel that's part of what's going on. But you're not going to get that from mainstream media. You just aren't. Again, in this whole thing that is going on, I believe it was the New York Times on Monday. This kind of, to me, this just takes the cake about everything. There were 37 psychiatrists and mental health professionals who got together and decided that they were going to publish a letter in the New York Times about the mental health of President Donald Trump. Now, you might be saying, well, when did they examine him to make a diagnosis one way or the other? Well, the answer is they didn't. They just decided, 37 of them, got together one day, I guess for coffee someplace, right? And said, hey, you know what? Let's do this. Let's go out and tell the public that we believe that the president is mentally unstable. Now, let that sink in for a moment. If 37 people had gotten together and said that about Obama, what would have happened? Let's see. 37 individuals would have lost their licenses. I would have heard, let's see, the mental health professionals acted stupidly, like he said about the police in 2009. I mean, it would have been on national news on a 24-hour loop for about a week. Those people would have been run out of town. But not now. Not with this administration. Anything goes. So they published this saying that he's mentally unstable, and they called it grave emotional instability. And here's what they said. We believe that the grave emotional instability indicated by Mr. Trump's speech and actions makes him incapable of serving safely as the president. He said, they went on to say he has the inability to tolerate views differently from his own, leading to rage reactions. His words and behavior suggest a profound inability to empathize. And they go on to say that individuals with these traits distort reality to suit their psychological state, attacking facts and those who convey them, such as journalists and scientists. Now, I don't know if your head right now is, the eyes are in the back of your head right now from hearing this, and that your head's spinning because you can't believe this. Well, believe it, it's true. And what I take from this, and I'm imagining you're taking the same thing, is that these 37 are obviously left-leaning, pro-left media. They're for mainstream media, and they're pro-climate change because of what they said in regards to the scientists. Talked about journalists and scientists. So, in other words, part of the reason that President Trump, in their minds, is gravely emotional, has a grave emotional instability. He doesn't believe in climate change. He's a climate change denier. He went against the scientists. So therefore, he has to be unstable. To me, all of what they said, it really describes the left to me in a lot of regards, except for climate change, of course, because, they believe in climate change. Now, you may say, how do they get away with this? I don't know. Because there's a standard. It's called the Goldwater Rule. And it's that you're not supposed to render a diagnosis unless you have actually personally examined that person. And they have not. And they're not even saying that they have. What they're saying is, and this is what the left does. Oh, that rule, it's antiquated. You don't need that. You don't need to go and talk to somebody personally to know what you know, right? You know what you know, and that is that he's mentally unstable. Unbelievable. And I don't know. I mean, feel free to go to the New York website there and the licensing board and find out if you feel like it, if you should contact them, file a complaint about that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the thing of it is, Donald Trump is a public figure now. Like, if they had said that about you or me as just private citizens, we could have a really good case here for defamation, right? Because they don't even know you, and they just make this assumption. And not only do they do that, but they publish it in the New York Times, okay? So I think you'd have a pretty good cause of action. Not saying you'd win, but I think you would have a really good chance of winning. But the problem is with Donald Trump is that he's a public figure now. And in order to prove defamation in regards to a public figure, you have to show that there was actual malice. And actual malice is basically saying, you have to prove that the plaintiff's reputation was injured in some way, and there are damages. And of course, people are going to say, well, look at his reputation. He already has a horrible reputation. So, look at him. Here's his actions. This shows that he's mentally unstable. Because he said this, he did this, whatever. I don't think they'd win on the merits, but I'm just saying that's what would have to happen, and that's what they would talk about. Not only that, but when you talk about somebody's mental capacity and mental health and the state of mind, you're going to open up all of their personal records, right? If they've ever been to a mental health counselor, therapist, psychiatrist, psychologist, that's going to be all out in public record now. You're going to open up everything to prove, and basically at this point, the burden would be on Donald Trump to prove that he's not mentally unstable, which is ridiculous. So it's like the left can bring any false claims that they want, and it's going to be on you then, Donald Trump, to prove what they're saying is not true. And in addition, all of his health records, mental health records, and possibly the physical records in his doctor's files, his confidential information, is going to have to be opened up. So they know, these 37 people know that they can say just about anything that they want to say, and nobody's going to do a darn thing about it. My thing is, I want to know who these 37 people are, and I'll tell you why. 37 people just don't happen to walk by a coffee shop one day and sit down and go, you know what? I think we ought to do this. I want to know who's behind what they did. Because I think if you look hard enough, you're going to find that there's somebody who decided that they were going to do this. It's another one of those things, strike while the iron is hot. We have all these people like Pelosi and Cummings coming out against him. We have people attacking Flynn from the National Security Advisors, the NSA. We've got all this information, blah, 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 blah. Mounting. Okay, let's hit him while we can. And they were probably hoping that when they did that, he would go, oh my God, and he would start screaming and dancing around, or whatever it is that they think that he would do to prove to America that really, see, look at that, we were right, he's not capable of being president because he's mentally unstable. Right, that's why he's a successful businessman, why he's the president of the United States, and on and on and on. Come on, people. Nothing makes me more incensed than stuff like this. This is just an absolute personal attack. These people are so good at it. And again, they know they don't have a leg to stand on. But that doesn't matter. When you're on the left and you're following the Alinsky rules for radicals, all you got to do is just say something long enough, and then people will start to believe it. There are a lot of people in the public, they don't take the time to do their own research. They see 37 quote-unquote experts that come together and make this claim without even having examined the president. And they'll say, oh, well, if the experts say he's not stable, then, by gosh, I guess he's not stable. And how ridiculous is... You should be as mad as I am. I'm telling you. This could happen to any one of us. But it won't happen to us because we're private individuals. But that doesn't mean something like that couldn't happen. And especially if you became a public figure, this could happen to you all day long. What are you going to do about it? Another one of those agendas on the left, another one of those attacks that we, as conservatives, we don't do it. We don't do things like that. We play by the rules. And so they always seem, in a lot of respects, to have a leg up on us because we're not willing to sink that low. But the left, they're always willing to go there. No problem. You want to sink low? No problem. They're always there. And speaking of that, sometimes, we don't know who's on the left and who's on the right, right? Sometimes when we have these Republicans, the rhinos, they're Democrats in Republican clothing. That's all they are. And you don't know when they're going to say something or do something that's going to hurt our position. Jason Chaffetz is one of those that I'm talking about. He's the House Oversight Committee chairman. He was one of those that was, that were helping in the Benghazi, and really what came out of that in a lot of respects. He now is saying, what happened down in Mar-a-Lago? When you were down there talking to the Japanese Prime Minister, I want to know what happened. He's alleging that the security protocol may not have been met. That President Trump may have done things that he shouldn't have done because it violated security. In particular, he's talking about a conversation that President Trump had with the Prime Minister of Japan about North Korea's launch of a ballistic missile when he was in a public dining room when other diners and wait staff were present. He has some questions for the president. He wants to know, look at this. This is just too much. He wants to know the vetting process that Trump used on guests and wait staff and other people that were there. Okay, we're nobody wants to be interested in those that are coming into the country that may do us harm. No. We want to know who's at the dinner table. What did you do? How did you vet those people? Let's worry about that vetting as we wonder about the TROs and how they're going to be stopped all over Seattle, now Virginia, because those on the left don't care if people come in to harm us. They really don't care. And yes, I said it. They really don't care, because if they did, they would know that a temporary ban on people coming in from 7 countries designated by the prior administration as those that may have people that would harm us, terrorists, that having a temporary ban is no big deal. But no. They want that done away with. And they're doing a pretty good job of it right now because the country's wide open, thanks to Seattle and Virginia. And now we have to go to the appeals court and fight that. But anyway, back to Chaffetz. He also wants to know what documents were reviewed at the table and in common areas. He wants a response on or before February 28th. Thank you very much. Now, here's what I want to know. All the times that the Muslim Brotherhood were invited into the White House, where was Jason Chaffetz? Where was he asking about a vetting process on those people? Where was he to ask what documents were looked at when those people were present? I didn't hear a peep from him at that point. Nobody said, hey, Muslim Brotherhood's going in there. Did they put everything away? Are there documents out that could harm national security? Did anybody check? Didn't hear a peep. Or what about the time when Black Lives Matter were invited into the White House? And even one of the leaders of Black Lives Matter, when he was in the White House, was tweeting out about what they were talking about. And as I recall, and I could be incorrect about this, but as I recall, those were kind of like closed-door meetings where, the public certainly wasn't invited in. I don't think even the media was invited in. And yet they sat there and had these conversations. Was anybody worried about protocol then? Is this only because, they were in the White House, so there's no big deal? You know, is it the fact that Mar-a-Lago is not the White House? Is that what he's concerned about? Because if that's all it is, how does that make sense? And even Sean Spicer, explained, we had everything under control. We know what we're doing. Everything was fine. But that's not good enough for Chaffetz. No, he wants to know, what they had for dessert. And and any other particular conversation they may have had that might have hurt national security. Where was okay? Excuse me. Where was Chaffetz with the whole Hillary Clinton emails? Why isn't he still up at night worried about that? He was one of those people that said, I'm never going to let this go. Well, okay, it seems like you got a lot of time right now to look into the Trump administration, and you still haven't done anything about the emails in the server and all that other stuff with Hillary Clinton and, a little thing called the Clinton Foundation. So maybe you should spend more time on that. See, I just think, again, people are, I think with Chaffetz, I think he's grandstanding. I really do. He's becoming the Elizabeth Warren of the Republican Party. Whatever he can do to gain some attention. So he's got to start picking on Donald Trump because everybody else is. So let's just jump on that bandwagon because you might get a tweet out or something or a hashtag that is started, and you can say, "Hey, you know what? I spearheaded that. Woohoo! What are you running for, Chaffetz? Where do you want to go next? Because you're already working towards that next position by spending time on ridiculous stuff. We'll say later in the day today, he's saying, well, we've got to look into those leaks. Well, that leaks that are coming out of the White House and possibly, from the DOJ under the old Obama administration. He said, you just can't hand it out like candy, talking about the secrets or the classified information that's possibly coming out of the White House. Okay, so why wasn't that your first concern? You know why it wasn't? Because you had to wait for somebody in the general public to tell you that. So then you turned your attention away from Mar-a-Lago and a dinner he was having with the Prime Minister of Japan on to something that's really important. And while you're at it, Jason, why don't you look to see who violated this man's constitutional rights when he was a private citizen? So if you really want to, if justice is what you're all about, go deeper, Jason. Go deeper and find out all that you can. Who's involved? Who in the probably the prior Obama administration, possibly the current administration, more likely in the Obama administration. Find out exactly who it is and then bring them to justice. And also find out who the person was that needs to be replaced, that gave the order to listen to the conversation and record the conversation of Flynn when he was a private citizen. And I know people may say, well, but really, Susan, this was about national security. If he was doing something wrong, we should know about it. Again, if you're willing to give up your constitutional rights, then that argument is okay. But if you're not willing to do that, and you don't want your rights stepped on, then you really have to look and see what's going on. How much more is going on that shouldn't be going on, that's not constitutional? It probably goes on every day, and we don't know about it. How many more constitutional rights of ours are going to be eroded because we don't speak up? So Mr. Chaffetz, you go out there and you do your work this time. Forget about Mar-a-Lago, and find out who is leaking information that's confidential, potentially secret information to the press, and they're leaking it out into public so that all the countries, Russia, you're worried about Russia? Well, somebody's leaking that information out to Russia and the rest of the world. That's what you should be concerned about. That's where your priorities should go. Unbelievable. You know, and I think one of the things too that's happening, we continue to just assume that it's okay to treat the Trump administration with disrespect. And I don't mean you and I, you and me. I'm talking about, for example, Betsy DeVos. Now, you may not like her. You may say, I don't care about her philosophy. I think she's all wrong. I don't believe in charter schools, a voucher program, whatever the case may be. And that's fine. But you're not the school, right? The schools should be welcoming this woman in because basically she's the Secretary of the Department of Education. She kind of is over all of you, all right? Whether you like it or not. And you should welcome her in and show her the courtesy, even if you don't agree with her. Show her the courtesy of listening to her, and maybe you could learn something. Maybe, she has some ideas here that might be good for you to implement. You never know. The San Diego Unified School District had extended an invitation to her to come and speak at their school district board meetings. But they rescinded that order, or that invitation. Now, why did that happen? Well, very simply because San Diego is a very big union town. They also have teachers' unions. And when the teachers' union found out that Betsy DeVos, God forbid, had been invited to speak at the San Diego Unified School District, they said, whoa, we're not having her here. And the board president, who, by the way, just happens to also be a union leader in San Diego, another union, a prominent union, said, you know what, I am so sorry. I should have asked you first. So we're going to just dismiss that, and we're not going to invite her here. We're going to uninvite her. And I'll tell you what, even that invitation from the school board in the very beginning, what they had planned to do was basically publicly call her out, showing a lack of respect. They wanted to bring her there and say, see, we don't need you. We're doing a fantastic job. So it wasn't like they were going to show her respect, invite her in, listen to her, and give her the benefit of the doubt. No, they weren't going to do that. And I'll tell you something, parents. This right here should show you that it's not your child's education that these school districts are concerned with and these unions are concerned with. They're concerned with money in their pockets. They didn't want to hear what she might say that could possibly help your child's education. It's not what it's about. And I tell you what, each and every one of you ought to be down there in your school board saying, you need to invite Betsy DeVos into our schools and let us hear what she has to say. And let us determine for our child whether or not what she's saying is something that we want to implement. Because otherwise, they're going to keep doing this in each district, mostly in the blue states, that don't want her in. They don't want voucher programs because then they think, well, we might have teachers that we have to lay off or fire because the kids will start going to schools that perform better, where they have better teachers, where the teachers care more, whatever the case may be. And they don't want that. So please, don't be fooled by the fact that they're like, well, we're doing this for your own good, or we have your child's best interest in mind. If they're not inviting the Secretary of Education into your school, into your child's school, they're lying to you. Man, I tell you, a lot has happened. A lot is continuing to go on. Keep the faith. Stop believing the mainstream media. Stop falling prey to what they're saying. Half the time what they're feeding you is exactly what they want to feed you. This president is at a 48% approval rating, which is unheard of at this early on in the game. The majority of Americans are for him, not against him. The mainstream media would have you believe otherwise. I thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. We'll see you again next week. Until then, God bless you. Take care of yourself. Don't be hard on yourself. Don't listen to the news all the time. Don't believe them. We'll see you again next week. Take care.